Ava stared at the laundry basket with the kind of exhaustion that came from 3 weeks of barely adequate sleep. The USS Meridian hummed quietly around her, its corridors empty in the late cycle hours. She'd finally managed to gather her uniforms, her civilian clothes, the towels that smelled faintly of recycled air and synthetic lavender, everything she'd been putting off for days. And now, as she reached for the basket, it chirped at her. Not the basket. Something in the basket. "Oh no," Ava whispered. "No, no, no. Not again." 2 pairs of luminous golden eyes blinked up at her from beneath a tangle of her favorite shirt. The eyes belonged to creatures that the xenobiology reports had classified as Chrysian juveniles, apex predators from a death world 3 systems over, rescued from a derelict vessel 2 months ago. They were supposed to be in the xenobiology lab. They were supposed to be monitored, contained, studied from behind reinforced transparent aluminum. They were not supposed to be in her laundry. The larger of the 2 cubs, she'd secretly started calling him Stripe because of the silver marking down his spine, made a sound somewhere between a purr and a growl. His sister, Shadow, smaller but somehow more menacing, kneaded her tiny claws into Ava's sweatpants. "Ben is going to kill me," Ava muttered, carefully setting the basket down. "Ben is absolutely going to space me out an airlock." Ben was the ship's xenobiologist, and technically, these were his responsibility. But Ava had made the mistake of visiting the lab during feeding time, and the cubs had imprinted on her like she was their lost mother. Every security protocol, every locked door, every magnetic seal, they bypassed them all. Twice now, she'd found them in her quarters. This was the 3rd incident in a week. The problem was that Chrysian cubs were designed by evolution to be perfect hunters. Even at this size, barely larger than house cats from old Earth, they possessed retractable claws that could slice through steel, bone-crushing jaw strength, and an intelligence that bordered on uncanny. Their species had conquered their planet's entire food chain before developing space travel. And they thought Ava's laundry smelled like home. "Okay," Ava said, crouching down slowly. "Okay. Let's think about this logically." Stripe tilted his head, his tufted ears swiveling toward her voice. Shadow's tail, segmented and covered in microscopic sensory hairs, flicked lazily over a sock. Ava had 3 options. 1. Call Ben immediately, admit defeat, and face his inevitable lecture about maintaining proper boundaries with xenofauna. 2. Try to physically remove the cubs herself, risking both shredded clothes and shredded arms. 3. Attempt negotiation. She chose option 3. Because she was human. And humans had a terrible habit of trying to reason with things that wanted to eat them. "Listen," Ava said, sitting cross-legged on the floor. "I need those clothes. I have a duty shift in 6 hours, and Captain Rodriguez has a strict policy about dress code. You 2 have a perfectly good habitat in the lab. It has heating lamps. It has those weird, crunchy treats you like. It has Ben, who is very worried about you." Shadow yawned, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Stripe burrowed deeper into the laundry, his purring intensifying. Ava sighed. "Right. Of course. Why would you listen to logic?" She stood up carefully and walked to her personal locker, retrieving the emergency ration bar she'd been saving. It was chocolate-flavored synthetic protein banned in the lab because xenobiologists worried about contaminating alien digestive systems with Earth compounds. But Ava had learned that Chrysian cubs were surprisingly omnivorous, and they had developed an obsession with chocolate. The moment she crinkled the wrapper, both cubs' heads snapped toward her with predatory precision. Their pupils dilated. Shadow's tail went rigid. "Oh, now I have your attention," Ava said, breaking the bar in half. "Here's the deal. You get out of my laundry, I give you chocolate. You stay in my laundry, I call Ben, and he puts you on a vegetable-only diet for a week. Your choice." For a moment, nothing happened. Then Stripe stood up, shook himself free of a t-shirt, and hopped out of the basket, with liquid grace. Shadow followed, though she cast one longing look back at the sweatpants. Ava tossed each of them a piece of chocolate, which they caught mid-air with reflexes that would have terrified any sane person. While they were distracted, crunching happily on their contraband treat, Ava quickly gathered her clothes and shoved them into the washing unit. "There," she said triumphantly. "See? Cooperation. Diplomacy. The foundation of human," her communicator chirped. Ben's voice crackled through, edged with panic. "Ava? Ava. The Cubs are gone again. I've got security searching the ship. Have you seen them? If they get into the cargo bay?" Ava looked down at the two predators, who were now sitting side by side, staring up at her with expressions that managed to look both innocent and calculating. "Found them," she said into the communicator. They're in my quarters." Again, there was a long pause. Then, "I'm coming over. Don't move. Don't engage. Just, too late," Ava said, watching as Stripe jumped onto her bunk and curled up on her pillow. Shadow followed, positioning herself as a perfect little spoon against her brother. "They've made themselves comfortable." Quote, Ben arrived 12 minutes later, armed with a containment cage, a tranquilizer stick, and an expression of pure exasperation. He stopped in the doorway, staring at the scene. Ava, sitting at her desk, doing reports, while two of the galaxy's most dangerous predators slept peacefully on her bed. "How?" he asked simply. Ava smiled and held up the empty chocolate wrapper. "You bribed apex predators. With chocolate. I negotiated with intelligent beings using mutually beneficial trade agreements," Ava corrected. "There's a difference." Ben shook his head, but he was smiling now. "You know what the scary part is? This is going to work. We'll publish this. Treat-based behavioral modification in Chrysian juveniles. Just don't tell them I used my laundry as the testing ground," Ava said. On the bunk, Stripe cracked open one golden eye, studied the two humans for a moment, then went back to sleep. Shadow's tail twitched contentedly. Somewhere in the vast darkness of space, humanity continued its strange journey through the stars. Not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but through the inexplicable ability to turn anything, even death-world predators, into friends, one chocolate bar and one laundry basket at a time.